founder of Host Agency Reviews. This is the Friday 15. Every Friday, 12 p.m. Central Time, we answer your industry questions. And if you have a question for us, you can go to hostagencyreviews.com/Friday15, and that will allow you to ask the questions for any of our future co-hosts. And speaking of co-hosts, today we have on Katie WIlliams from Tern. Hello, Katie.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Steph. Thank you, as always, for having me. It's so great to be here. Yes, as Steph mentioned, my name is Katie, and I am one of the co-founders at Tern.
Well, so if people aren't, because typically we have on host agencies as our co-host, people may not be as familiar with Tern because we're newer. Can you give us maybe like a 1 minute what Tern is so people understand?
For sure. Yes, absolutely. You can hear me okay with the headphones, right?
Yep,
I
and they
look
look
like I'm
great.
about to fly a plane, but it's best for canceling out the background noise, which today seems to be aplenty. Yes, of course. Let me give the quick little 30-second spiel on Tern. So so we started the company January of last year, which is so crazy to reflect on. It feels like simultaneously a year has gone by and also 7
No
years all at
time.
once. Yeah, correct. Yep, exactly. So we are building basically the consolidated workflow tools for travel advisors. So myself and my two co-founders, when we started investigating travel as kind of an industry that we were potentially curious about, we started talking to travel advisors. A lot of folks that will be listening to this call, we started asking a bunch of questions. We went to the ASTA Global Convention in San Francisco in 2022 to just figure out what this space needed. And what we heard was the absolute dominant takeaway being that the technology is fragmented and disparate in this space. And so what we set out to build
Mhm.
is something that consolidates the many different workflows that advisors are currently doing to run their business. So that's everything from trip planning to CRM to task management to automations to email messaging and et cetera. So it kind of runs the gamut, but that's what we're building.
You're building the holy grail for the travel industry.
That's the idea. That's exactly the idea.
Well, let's see. So we've got some questions that came in from everybody. Before we do, a couple announcements. One, so the other day this came up in our team meeting, and I was like, I have to share this on the Friday 15. So there is something called flightangels.org for those animal lovers out there. So what this is in Puerto Rico, if you have clients or yourself, if you're going to Puerto Rico, there is a rescue organization there that brings Puerto Rican dogs and cats back to the US. And what they do is they use travelers. They pay for like the extra crating and everything for the dogs, but and the cats. But you bring them to the airport, and I was like, this is a really cool thing for anyone that loves
Smart.
dogs or has clients that love dogs and are heading to Puerto Rico. So we will link to that in the comments as just a random piece of knowledge for you all. And then
I
the
love
other
that.
thing to note is, I know, isn't it cute? Um, the
So
other
cute.
thing to note is, let me see. Okay, so I'm not sure if we sent it out already or we're going to be sending it out because I'm not familiar with when we send things out. But we are having, that we normally put out our once a month newsletter and it goes out on the full moon. We are also now pushing something out on the new moon, which means when you look out and there's no moon in the sky. So on the new moon, we will be publishing out our upcoming webinars that we're doing. So be on the lookout for that in your inbox. It should be coming up, if it hasn't already, sometime in the next few days. So let's get to our questions. Katie, our first one comes in from Anonymous. They say, I'd like to switch to Tern. We're currently on Axus. Is there an easy way to transfer that data, or can you tell me the level of manual work that needs to be done by our team to make that move? And before we get into that, for those that aren't familiar, Axus is a travel itinerary building app. And so, Katie, tell us about the move.
For sure. It's a great question. Comes up all the time. So I'm excited to be talking about it. Well, first and foremost, I'll say, Anonymous, if you want to disclose yourself at some point, feel free to shoot me an email, katie@tern.travel, and we can talk more about this. And the reason I mention that is because the barrier to entry to switch systems in this industry is high. No matter how you slice it, it's high. You've got data. I was talking about disparate and fragmented systems. You've got data in multiple tools that you're trying to pull out to think about migrating to a system like Tern. Um, and so I think the work that we have to do on the Tern side, and we talk about this all of the time as a team, is what can we do to reduce that barrier to entry? And so that's incredibly top of mind for us. So that won't ever, I won't misconstrue that for anybody. That won't ever entirely reduce, like, that won't ever take the manual effort to zero, but it will dramatically reduce it. So a couple of the things that we're thinking about. One, we will be introducing kind of an implementation package that allows you to tell us what you want to import into Tern, and then we will work with a co-pilot to bring that into the system for you. So that's kind of one thing that we're working on standing up, so that you can say, okay, I want to purchase this package, this implementation package, so that I can have my data, some of my data that qualifies to be migrated into Tern. So that's one thing. The other thing that we're super bullish on at Tern is using AI. Everybody's talking about AI right now, but I think actually one of the coolest use cases for this industry, and specifically for travel advisors, is using it to bring in some of this data. And so that's another thing that we're focused on. We actually have a webinar on Thursday that will start to go into how we're thinking about both of these things. So if that's of interest, we'd love to have you tune in. We can link it, I assume, Steph, if that's okay. We can link it in the show
Yes,
notes.
definitely.
For sure. Okay, cool. So that folks can come. But actually, this is a super timely question for that, because we will be talking about it there. And then also, I'll say to Anonymous, thanks so much for the interest in our product. I really appreciate the question, and hopefully we can work with you to move your data seamlessly over from your current system.
So, and that goes for Axus, any other travel itinerary or CRMs. Okay, perfect.
Correct. Yep.
And then
Correct.
do you have any idea of how long it takes to migrate and map everything over as a general rule? Like, are we talking this takes weeks? Is it days?
It totally depends on where you're coming from and how much data you have. I've talked to advisors that have hundreds of templates in a Dubsado, for example. And that
Mhm.
stuff, some of it, like some of the, it just really depends on how much volume we're talking about. Now, I always encourage this also. So I could say, if you're dealing with hundreds of templates, you have thousands of contacts, let's say you're on like the north end of like data, you just have a lot of
Mhm.
it, that could take a few weeks, and that would be like you're actually dedicating a significant portion of your time copying and pasting and moving that information over. Now, again, that's like totally separate from like what we're willing to invest to help you do that. But just for the sake of Steph, to answer your question, level setting on how long that could actually take, it can definitely be cumbersome if you have a lot of data. Now, if you're kind of in the middle of the road, you've got something for your itinerary planner, and maybe you've got, 20 trips that you're currently kind of in the planning process with that need to get moved over, I would say you could knock that out inside of a week, to make sure that it's really kind of recreated in Tern in the right ways. But yes, it ultimately really just comes down to how much data you have.
Perfect. Well, Anonymous, I since I know your name because you emailed me specifically about this, I'm also gonna send you over Katie's email in case you happen to miss this. So let's see. The other thing I wanted to show is we have an article on our site with the travel itinerary builders out there and turns within there. And so you can take a look and you can see because Tern, you just did a huge release, right? On Thursday, yesterday.
So it's actually this Thursday. So 3 days.
Okay. And we're pre-recording this, so yesterday,
Oh,
for those
I'm
that are
sorry,
listening
Steph.
live.
Yeah, that's right. Live
That's
look.
okay. Well well, people will know our secret that we pre-recorded it, but that's because they're very, very busy working for this launch, and people are gonna be crazy once this comes out. So, but you can check out on Turn all of, the information they have here. You can see, like, the products that are offered within it, the pricing, there's a lot of, let's see. It also has links to like samples of the itinerary builder demo and just the itinerary and what it would look like for your clients. So it's really handy to see that things. Of course, you can go to Turn's website as well, but we will link to that. Let's see. Question number two. This is a fun one because it's not often after having been in the industry for like 20 years that I get a question that I've never had before, and this one I've never had before. So this is from Sandra S. I have been diagnosed with ADHD, and of course, some of the things I struggle with is creating processes and maintaining focus, among other things. I'm relatively new, and I'd like my niche to include ADHD travelers. Any tips and tricks for an ADHD advisor to start and keep up with processes and tasks? Thanks so much. So, Katie, first of all, do you have ADHD? I do.
I do. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure. I do.
I think
Yeah,
actually, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have
it's
ADHD
quite
because of like
common.
the hyper focus. We're just like, I love host agencies or whatever it is, and you
It's
get
incredibly
totally
common.
into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
So, what kind of tips do you have? And also, does Turn help with any of this as she's talking with processes?
yeah, so that's exactly what I was gonna touch on. So first of all, Sandra, you're in good company. I feel you. I deal with this every single day. Yes. Okay, so as ADHD folks, what tends to happen? We get distracted. So, what are the ways to eliminate the potential likelihood for getting distracted? It's automating parts of your workflow. It's actually building out the right structures, workflows, automations, email templates, the stuff that you can use time and time again to create the process in your day, the type of stuff that is still happening on the back end while you're working on other things. So that, like, if you get distracted by something, you don't actually have to worry that this automated birthday email is going to go out because you've already pre-configured that those birthday emails are just going to go out when it's somebody's birthday. So that is, Steph was talking about the webinar that we're doing this week on automations and task templates. These are all the things that are going to help exactly this use case. So would love to see you be able to capitalize on that functionality in turn. It's the kind of, I always like to say, it's like the set it and forget it type functionality, which is really important for time savings, but also to eliminate distractions. And in this industry, they are aplenty. I also figured I'd throw out, Steph, hopefully that was helpful. Tell me if there's anything I can double down on there. But I also figured I'd throw out like a personal workflow hack that I found to work really well for
No,
me as
definitely.
a ADHD gal, which is I use, it's called the Pomodoro method. And it's basically like time boxing anything you're doing in a day by 20 minutes. So your day is sort of incremented out by 20 minutes. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm spending 20 minutes on email. And then the next 20 minutes is on another thing. But it keeps the time blocks digestible enough so that I can really eliminate the distraction. I've found that to be quite effective for my day personally. So I'll throw that out there as a recommendation if it's useful for you. But yes, generally speaking, on the turn side, on the system side, we really want to enable you to be able to build the workflows and automations that allow you to kind of get distracted without it becoming detrimental to your business and not letting something fall through the cracks.
Hmm. Those are great tips. I also kind of do the time blocking. I find that really helpful. I do a
For
little
sure.
bit longer with some of my projects, but I'll block off because one of the things I think when an advisor starts up, there's a billion things going on. And I find
Totally.
especially where I get really distracted is when I have to jump on calls on and off throughout the day. And so I put those in separate times where people can block those. So I try to bunch those together because those can really disrupt me. Uh, and then the other thing,
Mhm.
you mentioned this earlier, is the noise canceling headphones are
Imperative.
that's
Yep.
really helpful for me, and then I put white noise on in the background because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, what's that? Oh, I'll go outside. Oh," especially
Totally.
when you work from oh, I'm terrible, I'm terrible. It's amazing I have a company, but miraculously, somehow it happened, and then just some other tips because our phones can be really, really distracting for us. I have an iPhone, I'm assuming other phones have this, but a focus mode where you're not getting notifications on there, so you're
Totally.
not texting back to whoever it is. And then the last thing I would say is on our last travel agent chatter episode, which I'll link to in the comments, the advisor we were interviewing, Judy Lombardi, she was talking about how she has a tickler file, which is essentially I want to work on this project, but I don't have the bandwidth right now. I'll come back to it when I have free time. And that way you don't feel like you have to keep it in your mind. So
Mm,
whether you call it a tickler filer, your brain dump, your to-do list for later, something so you can get it off your chest. And when you're like, that is the greatest idea I have ever had. I don't want to lose this. I better work on it now. You can just put it in that file and take a look at it later. So hopefully, Sandra, those are some tips to help you get going. But know that you are in very good company. Lots of entrepreneurs. Our superpower is that hyper focus. When it happens, I should say.
when
But
channeled, yes.
yeah, but hopefully you can work on it with some of these tools. Um, All right. So our last question comes in from Anonymous again. Is there a way to tell if a host agency offers Tern on their HAR profile? So there is not currently. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. Um, So we are doing an update to the site. So this is actually something we'll be adding soon, I think. Although by soon, I'm not sure if that's going to be a couple weeks or a month or two out there. But right now, like when you click on a host agency and in their metadata on the site, we do have like the technology and tools section, but this is a little outdated because the last time we updated this area was about 6 years ago, and we didn't have all the itinerary builders, the form builders, the CRMs. So it's kind of generic right now, but we will be changing that out so you will be able to tell if a host agency offers this as part of their program. And Katie, is there a way on your end where people can tell if a host agency includes this? Do host agencies purchase this and then give it to their clients?
Well, so yeah, let's start there. So first, we started building for advisors first. So
Hmm.
our the majority of our customer base today is advisors. So the next phase of our growth is an agency product, which we're actively working on right now, and we will start scaling up. So we have agencies who are kind of currently in process with us, and so if you just reach out to support@tern.travel, we'll always let you know if your agency is either in talks with us or kind of exploring Tern, because there's a variety of different ways that a host agency might choose to adopt our product. It could be they buy it for every single advisor. It could be
Yeah.
that, it's just sort of like a recommended, one of the top 3 recommended products that they recommend to their advisors. And so we're kind of in that process right now of figuring out what that looks like for different agencies. I'll say for sure, reach out if you're curious. We're happy to answer that question in terms of like where we're at in kind of that process with your particular host agency. We actually launched a wait list a couple of weeks ago to see, where sort of the initial agency interest lived. And within like the first 24 hours, we had over 75 agencies sign up wanting to explore a
So is
partnership. And
there some
so
interest?
there's a little bit of interest, which we're tremendously humbled by and super excited. And so all that to say, hopefully coming to an agency near you very soon. And then we will, of course, do everything we can to make the visibility into which agencies are working with us very clear.
That's awesome. And for those of you that are tuning in, is if this is something I would love to hear from you because we've got the basic bare bones of it structured out on how we want it on the site. But if there's specific things that you're looking for, say for instance, like if you're like, I would love to know not just that a host agency has Tern as a product, but whether or not it's included and the pricing or whatever it is, please email us because it's important to get feedback on these things. So you can email me, Stephanie at hostagencyreviews.com. Would love to hear any thoughts on adding technologies in there. Let's see. Well, Katie, we have reached the end of our time today. So if anyone has questions, wants to chat with you more, what's the best way to reach you?
Reach out to me via email. Always happy to. And also, like, if you want to jump on a call and just sort of like talk through if this could make sense for you, your business, your host agency, nothing is off limits. Just shoot me an email, Katie, Katie, @tern.travel. Again, I'll link that in the notes with Steph. But yeah, if you have any questions at all, truly, and for the initial anonymous question on sort of like what it could mean to move data over,
Yeah.
and if you want to be an early beta partner on that, I would love to have that conversation. So truly, nothing is off limits. Just shoot me an email.
Excellent. We will link to that. And then let's go over who will be our co-hosts coming up. So March 29th, we have April Swales with Uniglobe Travel Center will be on. April 5th, Oasis Travel Network. I believe it will be Jill will be on from Oasis Travel Network. And then April 12th will be Fora Travel. And then one last thing, I'm going to make sure we link to the webinar with your launch with all of the things that just came out, Katie. So because
Thanks,
people
Steph.
will be able to watch the recording, I'm assuming, right? We'll link
Yep,
to the
for sure.
recording.
Yep.
Cool. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Katie, during such a
Thank
busy week for
you.
you. And
Thank you so
thank all of
much. So
you for
fun.
joining us. We will see you next Friday, 12 p.m. Central Time. And don't forget, you can always ask your questions by going to hostagencyreviews.com. /Friday15. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.